What's up, YouTube? It's Dweebo here. I did a video recently for Xenoblade Chronicles X called Should I Play It? Should You Play It? Or something like that, where I didn't give a review score. I just explained what the game was. I explained that gaming now, with the game industry, games all the time are just really well made. They don't really need a score. It's kind of what you're kind of into. I take that back. I'm backpedaling because I feel like you need to have a certain type of grade given to a game to identify with a certain person. So you'll see maybe a review I do for a game and you'll say, you know what, I'm starting to see that I compare with this, with Dweebo here. I think he's got similar taste in me. So you'll see a review and say, okay, whatever he gives, maybe that'll be similar to how I would feel about the game. I think it's important to give that. Instead of just saying, should you play it? I think having me giving my personal opinion on it might help. So I'm going to do that from now on. One caveat before I start on this is that you can like the stuff I give a bad grade to. There's going to be stuff that I explain that I like that's bad on my scale. Overall, taking story, gameplay, graphics, music, characters, whatever, you can have a bad game and still enjoy it. You can have a great game that I give a great score to, but say, hey, you know what, I didn't really dig this. I don't know. It didn't really impact me as much as it might other people. So enough of that explaining myself. Now I'm going to explain the scale itself. So my scale is based on 5 different levels. So the worst thing on my list out of 5, there's 5 different levels to this, is complete booty. Complete booty games are total garbage. There's an absolute disregard for the consumer most of the time. And it's basically a cash-in, and it's littered with bugs and terrible design choices. Here's my examples for these. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, because that was a mess. Don't need to really explain that. Halo Master Chief Collection, that was rushed out. The online wasn't working. People were buying that for the online, which did not work, and they were doing patches and then betas for the patches. Total mess. Should not have been messed up. Resident Evil 6, it was a total disregard for the series, what made it special, what made it great. They threw all that out. They became Call of Duty. And the last thing is anything on Atari except Pitfall. I feel like Atari is not a good system. I think it was cool for its time, but it was the beta of video games to me. Sue me. The next level on the scale is butt. And these games can have fun moments, but taking all aspects of a game into consideration, they do not hold up and overall will lead to an overall displeasing or frustrating experience. I put Driver for PlayStation 1 in here, and this is my first example of games that you can like that might be bad on my scale. I think people see the number system and they go, oh, that person gave it a 70, I hate that person, or they gave this a 90. Hey, I'm giving this a butt, but I loved Driver as a kid, and I still love that game. But overall, the story in that game and the missions that you have to do, you have to drive across the freaking world map 8 times within the first minute of the game. Oh my gosh, it's a mess. Jurassic Park for Genesis, Super Nintendo, a game I loved as a kid. Still enjoy that game, but overall, it's just hard to control at times. There's some cheap deaths in that game. It's not really good. Rascal for PS1, another childhood favorite, not a very good game. Golgo 13 for NES. Airblade for PS2, which is kind of an obscure one, but I remember that just game being a ripoff of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and not a very good one, but I had fun playing it. Duke Nukem Forever. Played that. It was funny at times, but taking all aspects again, not a very good game. The middle rating on my scale is called You Can Play It. Games in this category can function with few hiccups, but severely lack in being fun. They're not very engaging over all aspects, and they can easily be passed up for something in a higher category. So these are games that absolutely function. They are on a great engine. There's no really frame rate issues for the most part. For the most part, it's just a playable, fun game, but it's just average. These games are just very skippable. I'm going to get some flack for this maybe, but my first choice is Destiny. I feel like this game had awesome gameplay. The shooting mechanics, all of that aspect to it was perfected in this. This was basically the best Halo game, gameplay-wise. But it made you had to buy all this DLC. It didn't really do anything crazy with the genre over what we were kind of hyped up for it to be. It's just you can play it. It wasn't bad. You're not going to have an incredible time, maybe, but that's my personal view on it. The Assassin's Creed games, after 3, I love the Assassin's Creed series up to 3, and I think after that are just skippable games. I think just they're not very engaging. You've played these games before. After you've played 3, you don't need 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. It's done. The series is kind of done unless you are rebooting it or changing it, changing all aspects of it. The next game is Watch Dogs as an example. I feel like this game I was very excited for, but the more I saw of it, the more, people got their hands on it. This game just kind of, people started to see that it was, what's the fun? Like, where is the fun in this? So most of the time I'm saying these games are kind of a waste of time to be replaced with something in a higher category. Sonic Adventure, which I put in parentheses almost a butt on the scale. Sonic Adventure has a lot of problems, but man, it is fun for the most part. But man, if you skip it, I would not hold it against you. Next thing on here is Triforce Heroes, a game that it's the first Zelda game that it's just like, man, do we really need to play this? It didn't do anything crazy with the genre. It was Four Swords Adventures 2, and it didn't really have, I feel like it didn't have much of a, kind of presentation to it as the other Zelda games did. And my last game on this list is Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. This was kind of a repetitive game in the series. It just didn't really, it was kind of redundant. Like, we've played this before. Is there really anything new with this game? And there really wasn't. So I would put Mario & Luigi Paper Jam in under the you can play it scale. The next, second to the top on my scale, is called Rad. This is going to be a controversial one, but hear me out. You're going to have a good time with these games. They're well designed, very few annoying bugs, and you'll be happy you played them in the end. So games that I give this rating to, there's this big kind of debate right now with Metacritic scores and people getting mad if anything's under like an 80. I've seen people get mad over 80s versus giving 90s. And I think that debate I'm sidestepping that entire debate totally by calling a game just rad. A game that's rad is something I'm recommending that you play. You should go out of your way. You should play these games. You're going to be playing these games from years from now. You're going to come back to these games and have a fun time. It's almost like a blanket thing of saying, hey, just play these games. They're very well made. They're fun. You'll be talking with them. Late night conversations you're going to have with people are going to be, these games are going to be included in those conversations. Play these, you'll have fun. So my examples for what is a rad rating, what games do I believe get this rating? I would put the Ratchet & Clank series in here, the Uncharted games, Mass Effect series, Firewatch is a recent one, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, and Mario Kart 8. Now these games we can argue day in and day night. I liked Uncharted 1 is kind of like a good, but Uncharted 2 is like a great. That should be separate, right? Well, they're both rad. I feel like they both are playable games. They're fun. I might, if we want to get in the nitty gritty, and this is what I'll do in the review, is say, hey, maybe a game in the series was worse than this or better than this one. I'll point that out. But overall, if it needs to go down, I'll put it down to you can play it. But, people are so dead set on having, well, this is a little bit better than this one. I don't care about that. If a game is rad, it's rad. You'll have it on your shelf. You'll download it. You'll come back to this game in the future. So just let a game be rad. Now, what is my top tier? What are the games that I give the highest rating to? That would be called classic. Classic games, these titles break new ground or perfect aspects of a genre, sometimes creating entire new ones and changing the trajectory of the entire gaming industry. And I would put Ocarina of Time for N64 on there, Super Mario Bros. 3, The Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid 3, and Half-Life 2. Now, for example, Ocarina of Time is an example of a game that did the changing the entire industry. They broke new ground. They created the targeting system. They learned how to do 3D action games. They were the standard from then on out. That is a classic to me. That is a game that just blew away expectations. It blew away, set standards, and it laid the groundwork for developers to work on from then on out. Another game, Super Mario Bros. 3, there was side-scrollers before that. There was nothing new with side-scrollers at that point in the NES days. But what it did do was it perfected all aspects of that. You can pick up that game. I beat that game so many times, picking it up and playing it, because it's so enjoyable on all fronts. Another thing, too, to kind of point out with this scale is I'm not going to go into each story, music, gameplay, unless it's needed. For example, Super Mario Bros. 3, if you compare the story to that, to Last of Us, Last of Us has a great one. The Super Mario Bros. 3 would be a poor scale on that. It depends on what the game's going for. If the game is going for, in Super Mario Bros. 3 case, kind of a gameplay-driven, very cutesy story, it doesn't need to have deep character development, we're going to give it a pass. I'm going to give it a pass on that front, which I think a lot of people do. Last of Us, if the story sucked on that one, and you're heavily seeing cutscenes all the time, you know what it's trying to do. If it's doing that poorly, it wouldn't make the list. Games wouldn't make the list of rad. It wouldn't make the list of you can play it. It would, it would change the scale based on what the game's going for, what it kind of portrays to you. Metal Gear Solid 3, again, there's been action games that just perfected kind of the story, the sneaking around to me. It kind of just was a perfect game to me in that regard. Final Fantasy VII, it changed the trajectory of RPGs. You can say pre-Final Fantasy VII and post-Final Fantasy VII. So these are the games that are going to get that rating. I will give a classic, those come around every once in a while. The most recent one on here, Last of Us for me. I'm sure there's others, maybe for you. So that's my scale, guys. I'll probably link to this video, most of my reviews at first, to kind of let people know what the heck I'm grading on, how I'm looking at these games. So I hope you guys enjoy the reviews that I do. Let me know if you think this is a good scale. Maybe give me some tips to follow when I do this. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.